I'll say, I mean, one thing, I mean, this isn't, I just can't immediately think of another superhero that has this, but it does make him very unique. His spirituality. His spirituality as it relates to his sense of justice, and in our show, there's a way to describe this season as maybe Daredevil's biggest crisis of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and how much has the show changed after the creative restructuring after the strikes? What has remained and what have you discarded from the previous work?
Yeah, a lot of the material from the first round of filming is used in the entire series of Born Again. It was a restructuring and a different creative aim, but still using a lot of the things that were still built upon. The biggest thing is probably that it became more serialized, longer episode arcs. And there were some things that happened off screen that we decided in the first episode to depict on screen. That was also, by the way, a lot of these decisions were made before we were able to come on. But also, like, hats off to our EP Sana and our showrunner Dario for figuring out that Rubik's Cube.
Okay, in the show, New York society is really divided. What do you think that leads citizens to trust more in the vigilantes than in the institutions?
That's a good question. Well, I actually would say I don't think that in this show we do say that New York society trusts vigilantes more than institutions. I think it's a constant tension and a question. And I think it's because it's a bit unanswerable. It's kind of just talking about what happens when a system doesn't work perfectly, and how do you get justice in that. What else about that?
Yeah, that's it. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's, it's part of the core of the mystery of the show is who will ultimately hold the hearts and minds of New York City, the ethos of Matt or the ethos of Fisk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's funny you say it's unanswerable. I think that's the question, and if we could solve it, we might. It's almost like saying who it's like solving Laura Palmer at the end of Twin Peaks season 1, where it's like, oh no.
Yeah, and that's what's so nice about it is we have. Thank you for this question. If you don't mind, if we'll muse on it for a bit. It's kind of inspiring a bonanza of creativity over here. There's this idea where we have just a character who's Matt Murdock, and he's just one man, and you have this character Wilson Fisk who is just another man, and they are enemies or opponents, whatever you want to think of them as. And but however, they're also totems for different things, for two things: vigilante justice, but also he's a lawyer, right? He works within another system. And you'll see how that system works for him in the whole arc of the show. But also you have essentially a criminal at heart, a mob boss who is also working within the political system. And for what gain? You don't know if it's for power or if it's because he wants New York to love him or because he really cares about New York. And all of these things might be true. And because all these things might be true, because there's many, many sides to these coins, it can't be answerable. And that's what's kind of so interesting for us as filmmakers, is exploring how these things interact rather than answering what side to land on exactly. Now, of course, there's good guys and bad guys. We're not saying there's no bad in the world, there's no good in the world, but it is more of an exploration, I think, than like a side taking. Thank you for that question. That was fun.
So. I wanted to ask you also, do you think that is it the climate of constant tension that maybe encourages the emergence and support of these type of characters who take justice from their own hands?
I was thinking about this in relation to Matt and Fisk specifically. And Aaron, do you think that if Matt and Fisk were not in a tense environment, or an environment where they were constantly like Fisk wants more, but the justice system doesn't want him to have it, and Matt works in a justice system that works totally, do you think that they don't become at all hero and enemy, mass vigilante and gangster? Because there's an argument to be made that no matter what, these people are going to struggle with their own dualities and multitudes within themselves that they're constantly at odds with.
Yeah.
The dark self will always...
Whether or not they become like he has a devil inside of him, right? Like that is the core of Matt Murdock. And if he's able to repress it forever, that kind of sounds impossible. Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's and same thing, of course, with Fisk, is even if he really wants to fix New York City, you know, he has this thing, and there's a line, I believe it's in the trailer, that's kind of saying, that's talking about how it feels, you know, doesn't it actually feel good to let out your violent impulses, right? Those things can't be repressed forever, especially in these characters, but it's also something we all can kind of feel sometimes.
Okay, I don't know if you see me. Okay.
We can hear you. It's glitching, but keep going.
Okay. So, how do you explain that the citizens of New York allow such a populist and controversial figure as Wilson Fisk to get to the power? Because the criminal wins elections is something that we no longer that it no longer happens in fiction, right?
So the most interesting thing is we were shooting on day one with Vincent D'Onofrio, and Vincent has an extremely detailed and deep take on who Wilson Fisk is. That isn't just I want power or I want money or something like that. It is a person that is constant inner turmoil, and also has a very, very pure and genuine love for his wife, Vanessa, and wants everything for her. And so we're here on the set of his first mayoral debate, and we're shooting him standing in between, looking like a monster, sounding like a monster, between these two other politicians. And it felt like we observed the most human person. We were watching him, and he just didn't talk like the other people. And you kind of just started to understand why New York might vote for him, is because it was just kind of like everyone else felt like more of the same. And he was just talking about the truth of him getting shot in the face by a vigilante, which actually happened. So for us, we were just like, oh, that's really interesting, is how Vincent is one of the best actors in the world and is able to kind of humanize this process. We don't know if we still have you, by the way. We're just looking at ourselves. Oh, great.
Hey.
Great. All right, we're just looking at ourselves. We were like, oh, do we keep talking? Great.
Aaron's like, I just dropped some gold. Tell me that didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, finally, a final question.
Yeah.
About the future of the show. What character would you love to have for the next seasons? And maybe new ones, one from the MCU, or maybe rescuing any other from the Defenders?
Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat. No. What?
Selfishly, I just want to work with Tom Hiddleston and Oscar and Ethan and everybody again.
Oh, that's the answer.
Yeah.
If we could bring back.
We're just selfish. I don't know how the hell that fits in with Daredevil, but I want them in our show. I just want to work with them again. Yeah. Is that an okay answer? I know it's kind of a cop-out, but it really is in our hearts.